He does try moving the king up. The pawn does step forward. The king has to hide, but Magnus manages to capture an important pawn. Then the rook can move because now there's no more knight coming in with a double attack on king and queen. But as Magnus retreats his knight back from where it came, Magnus has successfully eliminated a black pawn. And it's not just any pawn. It's one of the most crucial defenders of the black king.
Yep, Magnus has broken through on that side of the board and he has a completely winning position now. Oh, and that bishop a3 move, it's so painful. You know, finally at the end, you know, when the position's already winning, he gets to improve his last piece, and now there's just nothing redeeming about Alireza's position anymore.
Brilliant move here from Magnus. We've been wondering what he's going to do about this bishop being blocked by its own pawn, and he chooses just the right moment to come in, putting pressure on black's bishop, forcing the trade there. And when the trade happens, Magnus is going to be getting his queen pointing towards the black knight. But more importantly, when the bishop has moved, it means that the white knight can now safely step into the middle of the board next. Alireza trying to get his queen up into the attack, making some final threats towards the white king. Magnus now has to make the assessment of whether or not he can move his knight into this powerful position in the middle of the board. Magnus needs to make sure he's not going to lose that he's not going to allow the black queen to make a lot of tricky checks in doing so. Instead, Magnus first uses his rook to push the queen away. The queen steps over back to the right side of the board. Now Magnus gets his knight in to this amazing position, and just look at white's pieces. Even if Magnus wasn't up a pawn, he would be completely winning here because his pieces are just dominating black right now.
Yeah, that knight is just amazing. There's like, you know, sometimes you're down a pawn, you have counterplay, but in this position, you not only are down a pawn, but you have like no threats whatsoever. Your king is very bad. The f6 pawn is super powerful. So I think Magnus is going to wrap this up really quickly.
And Magnus coming with his queen, Alireza trying his best to stay alive. But black's pieces are just so passive in addition to white's placements just being so dominating. And I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. Even if Magnus didn't have this extra pawn on f6, he would have a winning position. Because the placement of white's pieces is just so superior to black's.
Yeah, no, overall, I just like the way Magnus played this game. You know, if we look, we've been following it from the beginning, and I just felt like he always had it under control, always had like a little bit of a better idea of what to do, how to arrange his pieces. And then, you know, Alireza positionally made some mistakes, and Magnus just merciless in exploiting that.
And Magnus now taking his time. He can do that, of course, considering that he had a pretty massive time advantage the whole game. He steps with his rook over to the right side. Alireza trying to hide his king in the corner. I'm expecting Magnus to start trying to capture more black pawns in the very near future, moving his queen up and getting rid of this g5 pawn. Magnus really taking his time.
To watch out for, you cannot quite maybe go to g4 yet because the black queen would take the pawn on f6. So what did he just play?
He played the queen to e3. He's going after that g5 pawn. This is the reason why he moved his rook earlier, so that the rook takes control of that protection duty of the pawn on f6. Alireza once again trying to move his queen up into an attacking position, trying to give checks on the white king. Maybe Magnus can just move his rook one step up. Yes, he does do that. He saw that Alireza wanted to use the c2 square for his queen, so he just says no.
Yeah, he doesn't even give him like a sliver of counterplay. I mean, I'm sure taking on g5 was fine, and then you could block an f2, and still looked completely winning, but Magnus doesn't even let him have that.
Alireza now pushing his pawn forward. He realizes that if this pawn is going to be lost anyway, I might try to double the white pawns. And Magnus just says, I can take this pawn later. I'm not in a rush. And here Magnus moves in with his knight, giving a check on the king. The king moves away from the check. Magnus maneuvering his knight to a superior position. The knight was incredibly well placed on e5, but Magnus is saying, I want the queen there instead. And Alireza resigns the game. Magnus, just a dominating performance from him. It kind of looked like Alireza never stood a chance. It was a fairly equal position from the opening, but White always had that little edge, that little bit of an easier position to play. And the opening also gave Magnus a big time advantage. And being low on time, Alireza made some mistakes, which cost him dearly.